Good morning, and welcome back to episode 3 of the Procrastination Programming series. Last time we left off, we had just finished connecting TrueLayer. We had got the callback to our app, and now we need to do something with it. Let's just try our flow that we got working yesterday and see where we got to. As we had yesterday, we getting a 404 page because the page doesn't exist in our application, but we're successfully getting redirected back from TrueLayer. So let's start by just creating this page to dump out the code that we're getting back, similar to how TrueLayer do it on their mock application flow. So to do this, we just use Next.js file router, create a file for the callback, and use TSX since we're using TypeScript and JSX. We can just copy over the contents from the index file and use that just as an outline. Although it's pretty standard stuff. I think it's pretty common in code base to just copy things across. Not that that's always a good idea. Just change this just so we know that we're on the callback page. We don't need to redefine any of this. In the future, we'll move any of this head stuff into the override app component, which is shared across all the pages, so we can do more overarching layouts and things. For now, we'll just stick it in here. And we want to dump out the code. So to do this, we just need to get the code from the query parameters. To do that in Next.js, we can either they are passed through to the page in here, or we can use router from Next.js and destructure this. Query. And then we can pull the code out like that. There we go, automatically updates, and we get the code back. Let's just double check what happens if we don't have a code passed. Cool, nothing's displayed, but no errors, nice. So we've got this code. Now, with this code, we can call into some of the other APIs and start getting some information back. So we want the data API. Use the postman. So this is to obtain the access token. Use postman exchange code request within the authentication folder in order to exchange generated code into an access token. Okay, so there's a second layer of authentication that we need to do between our backend and the API. Let's try and find this call. As you can see, there's quite a few different pages and different flows to work through. The documentation on here, not the easiest to follow, but certainly not the worst. This page doesn't give us a very good indication of first what the generate auth link does, and then what the what we can do with the code that we get back from there. It seems to access the data API, we have to obtain an access token by exchanging the code that we get back. Client secret, team member, environments. Access tokens. Okay, so here's the thing that we were looking for. So this is the first step that we did. Yeah, where we go through, we get redirected back. Store this code. Okay, so yeah, this is the code, consent code from the user, and then we have to exchange code within the other. So we have to take that code and use our ID and secret to then generate a access token based on that code. Cool, doesn't sound too difficult. So we need our client ID, client secret, the code from step 2, and we'll get an access token and a refresh token back. Awesome. So let's implement this. To do that, we have a code that that's currently on the front end. We now need to pass this back into TrueLayer. We're attaching our client ID and client secret, which we can't expose to the client. So this will have to be done on a API route. Let's call this one OB. Let's just call it OB Connect. We'll copy similar code, just the structure from the other endpoint we did. And we'll remove the redirect for now. So this time we need the code from the front end. To do this, we can just get it off the request. We would probably want to pass it in the body. Cool. And next we can make a call to TrueLayer again to do the exchange for these. Now we need to find what the actual endpoint is for this. And they call it the Postman Exchange Code Request. So we need to find the API reference. Cool. So generate and refresh an access token. I think this is the one we need. Yeah. Exchange codes, get access token, renew access token using a fresh token, or generate a client credentials grant. Perfect. So yeah, this is the one that we need. So we've got a client ID, client secret. Is it worth getting the TrueLayer API SDK? I think so. Might as well instead of coding this ourselves. Interesting package. I don't think I've ever worked with it before. Using API is as simple as supplying it an open API and using the SDK as you would any other. Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I've definitely seen similar things like this in other libraries and other tools. Apollo and some of those come to mind using GraphQL, but this is pretty neat and quite nice that TrueLayer are using this. Definitely something that I'm going to explore a little bit more offline. Leave a comment in the description if you want me to make another video exploring that library a little bit further. Cool. Okay, so the install's finished now. Let's start using this code that they give us. Why not? Might as well get all the free work we can. Something's going on with formatting. I usually indent using 2 spaces. That seems to be the standard for most of the organizations that I've been working in recently. It's just a little bit cleaner. Right, response type. We don't care, we can just set that for anything for now, and we know that's going to be an error. So we need to decide what to actually pass through for this. So the code is 1. We've got the grant type. They only support authorization code. Oh wait. They only support, nope, authorization code is the one we need for this option, but it looks like there's different types for the other ones. Yeah, cool. So we also need our redirect URI. Not sure why it's not auto-completing this. My Copilot seems to be doing most of it. Hopefully it's got it right. Let's just use the same callback URL for now and just dump it to the front end. Obviously we'll want to save it in the back end at some point, but we'll just make sure we get this bit working first. Okay, so I think we just need our client ID and secret now. The wonders of Copilot. Look at that, completing it for me. Nice. Okay. So this is going to dump the response out to here. Let's see what we get from this then. just for simplicity to test this, let's change this to use the query parameters instead of the body. So we can just change this path and see what the response we get is. Cool. Okay, it looks like it responded. It's not a React component in page callback. It's because there's not a code being dumped out, and I think it doesn't like that. Or was that from before? Not sure. This may result in a stalled request. Okay, so this is I've just not. Yeah, it's just telling us that we haven't passed a response in this API endpoint. Got a bad request from TrueLayer. Doesn't seem like they've bundled up the error very well. I've skipped a few minutes of me playing around trying to figure out what was going wrong, but all it was we just weren't properly trying to pass the JSON in the error. Don't know why we need to do this. Probably a result of this library that we're using. Not a big fan, but oh well. At least it's working out well. At least we know what the error is. It's come back with invalid client. So we must be either passing something wrong or we're using like the wrong environment or wrong secrets. Double check the secrets and they look to be correct. Potentially the redirect URI isn't registered. So we can go and do that in our app settings. We've already registered the callback one, so it should be okay. We got the authorization code, we've got the code, redirect URI, client ID and client secret. So unless we're passing them wrong through here or something, potentially these two values need to be underscored like the rest of them. Yeah, they need to be underscored. My mistake. And the only one that we're missing is the code verifier. We don't need to use this, not now anyway. Might be something that we could use in the future to enhance security. Let's try running this again. And we're still getting a invalid client ID and client secret. I'm not I'm not sure what's wrong with it this time. Authorization code, we've got the code, redirect URI. This gives us the different error codes that we could get. We're getting the invalid request. Oh no, we're getting the neither of these that we're getting are actually listed here. Great. It's not very useful, is it? Are we using potentially the wrong version of the API? Okay, so we need to use the sandbox server. It's very complicated to work out how to change that. Really not very intuitive, TrueLayer. Cool. Still getting error, but at least it's different. It's better than it was before. So invalid grant type, authorization code. So again, I'm really not sure why that's an invalid grant type. The documentation says grant type and it's set to authorization code. Potentially when going through the redirect, we need to go through the client, the sandbox environment. I'm not sure whether it limits it otherwise. No, it shouldn't because the grant type is just what we're passing. So this should just be a data validity check. Trying it again. No luck on that. Okay. Potentially only certain grant types are enabled for the sandbox environment, or this is definitely what's being set for it everywhere else. Let's try changing it to something else and see if it still complains with the same issue. Okay, that's changed to invalid request. So potentially refresh token is fine, but the authorization code is not. Am I spelling it wrong somewhere? Definitely not spelling it wrong. It just doesn't look like they support this one for some reason. Maybe it's already used or something and they're just reporting the error badly. Possible. Let me just try the client credentials one just to see if that does anything. Okay, cool. So we get a full access token for this, and this is option 3, the client credentials. Takes the client ID, client secret, and then the scope. Pay direct, tracking, recurring payments. Okay, so this is just for accessing stuff ourselves. Got it. But we don't want, this isn't the one we want. We want the authorization code for the user. Potentially the code that we had previously, it was used. That's one of the only things I could think has maybe gone wrong. I'd hope they'd have better error messaging if that is the case though. Okay, let's try just copying this. Oh god, that was actually the error message. Okay, fun. So it works fine. It was just the previously, if you pass through the same code a second time, for some reason it would reject it with a invalid grant type error. Let's try and see if this happens again. Yeah, invalid grant. Okay, not very clear messaging, and doesn't tell me in the docs anywhere that that's the case, as far as I can see. Invalid grant. It definitely didn't have this or this, so it's not very useful. Maybe TrueLayer, you should probably have a look at this. Okay, at least we got it working though, so it wasn't an issue with anything that we've done, but just an issue with the API and the error response. So it works, it's just not useful. Alright, so we're getting the access token back. We can say it's a type bearer. We've got the refresh token as well, and the scope, and we see the expires in. Perfect. So now all we need to do is save this, and then we can use this to access the data for this user. Let's find one of the endpoints that we can use this to hit, and then we'll build against that now. Let's try one of these meta ones. Data about the access token account connection. So this is quite useful. Just it seems like just a small ping to double check that things are okay. Yeah, it gives us the provider. So perfect. So we can have a list of these and then fetch the different providers for them, all from the front end without having to cache things on our back end. That would be quite nice. Consent status and create that. Cool. Quite useful. Useful for fetching the data about them to kind of display, but I'm not sure this is something that exciting in terms of actual regular data. We'd probably only do this once if we have a backend and cache a lot of this stuff. I think the accounts one is the most useful for now. We can get a list of the different accounts, the display names, and the account numbers. Cool. Yeah, let's use this one for now. So what does it take in? Query parameters. That's interesting. The webhook URI. When async is set to true, a webhook will be posted to the URI provided. It's quite nice that it gives you a way to trigger a webhook from the API call for longer kind of running backend queries like this. So not much needs to be passed. We just pass the bearer token. Set this to false. We don't need to handle any of these yet. And again, we can use the same API generated from Swagger or whatever API schema they use, and then call the get accounts. Perfect. Okay, so really not sure on the way they've structured this API. It's kind of weird setting the auth like this earlier on. I guess it works for building things up, but it sounds like it could add some complexity if you're not careful with it. Okay, so we need to do a get accounts endpoint, passing the auth code. So once we connect here, we're getting the access token, so let's just get that out quickly. Now this access token is what we're going to use to call this get accounts, probably on another API endpoint or potentially from the front end. We could even do it. I think we'll probably put it on another endpoint and then use something like iron session, which is just a stateless session library. It works with quite a few frameworks and it's pretty easy to set up. We'll use this to store the access token for the user in the session, and then whenever we need it, we can just read off the session and pass it to any of the calls that we're doing. This way we're not kind of we could store it in like session storage on the client side, but I think this just makes it a little bit easier to use and we don't have to pass it through with all the calls from the front end to the back end, well, to our API before we pass them on to TrueLayer. For now, let's just dump it to the front end, or we'll just log it out here and then use it ourselves to pass it through, just to keep things simple so we can get some data back. And then in the next episode, we'll probably add some of the niceties and wire all these together a bit more cleanly. So let's copy this and change it to accounts. So we need to set the server still. And we'll just read the access token off of here. Off the query again. The get accounts endpoint. And the response will be result. It'll have results, and that'll be an array of objects. We can then pass that back just in the body of the response. And we just need to set the access token. Actually rather clean once it's in code form. Let's just copy this over. Okay, so we've got an error. We're not 100% sure what that is, but it doesn't seem like it's one from the API since it's not actually JSON, so we'll just log it out normally. Get accounts does not appear to be a valid operation on this API. Okay. Okay, so we need to pass different versions through for different endpoints. I like the idea of this, but this is really incredibly complicated to follow and figure out, like, how are you meant to find these easily without coming through these docs and searching all the way through it. Yeah, it's not that useful. Okay, cool. So not the same error, but an actual error from the API again. So we have to do our JSON parsing, invalid token, get an error description, but it's empty. Don't think we want to put these. The issuer is invalid. Okay, so we actually get an error description this time, but the issuer this time is invalid. So for some reason the sandbox issuer is not valid. Even though that is how we got the access token using the sandbox issuer. Let's have a look in the console if there's anything to do with issuers or if we need to enable the sandbox or anything. Could be using the data API. Data API should be valid. is there something that we're missing from the auth link side? Do we need to pass through specifically if the auth link one is going from, yeah, potentially we need to, when we go through the auth link, set it to be the sandbox, but I'm not certain. I think we can only use the mock one. I don't think we even get the option to use the live one yet. Yeah, it needs to be activated first, so I'm not sure what this issue with the invalid token is. Why is that issue invalid? What happens if we remove this? Maybe it's not needed anymore. Oh, okay, so you have to pass a different server through as well. Wow, that is incredibly complicated. It's really not very nice to set up. Okay, cool. We've actually got a list of accounts back. As you can see, there's quite a few mock ones. You can see we get the display name, we get the account type, the currency, the account numbers, sort code and account number, like the UK, we get the IBAN, and we get the provider, and even the logo for the provider, which is quite cool. Nice. Awesome. So we made quite good progress today. Got some actual data back. Ran into a few little issues along the way with the TrueLayer APIs and libraries, but didn't take too long. Altogether, I'd probably rate it maybe a 6 or a 7 for the overall API documentation. But hopefully, now we've got through these bits, we can start focusing on the coding on our side and maybe even add some styling as well. So we can get this all kind of looking pretty, looking like an app, showing back some data, and then maybe even get that deployed before we move on to actually doing something with this data. Hope it hasn't been too boring. I'll try and trim out some of the more finicky bits dealing with the error formats coming back from the API. But I think that's it for today. Thanks for watching. As always, I'll leave the GitHub source in the description. But if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye guys.